So hello, thank you very much for coming. My name is Bonnie Phillips. I have no disclosures, so we're going to skip this slide. I'm the editor for ecoRI News, which is the primary source for environmental news in Rhode Island. We are a nonprofit digital newsroom. We cover our environment. We are dedicated to covering issues on the environment and climate change throughout New England. We were founded by Joe Detz and Frank Carini, who are both here. I'm sorry, I've never done a slideshow, so forgive me. And it's loading slower. So they were co-founded in 2009. They worked in their garage. He was the editor at the Cincinnati Post and the Newport Daily News. There was no angel investors, no seed money, just sweat equity. One of the ways, I have been a journalist for 30 plus years. I worked for the Hartford Courant for 20 years and was a member of the team that won the Pulitzer Prize in 1999 for breaking news. I was also on the team that was a finalist for the Pulitzer for the Sandy Hook shootings. I was in the newsroom for that experience. ecoRI covers energy, including solar and wind farms, climate change, environmental justice, waste management, farming and food, wildlife and nature, transportation, aquaculture, and fisheries. As you probably know, climate change is going to adversely impact the lives and health of billions of people, and will increasingly do so over the next decades. It affects the most basic health requirements: clean air, safe water, sufficient food, and accurate shelter. It also poses new challenges to the control of infectious diseases. I'll tell you about a disease that's coming soon that hasn't been here before, and gradually increases the pressure on the natural, economic, and social systems that sustain health. One of the most basic rights is clean air, but here in Rhode Island, it's not always the case. Air pollution from the Port of Providence and I-95 has caused the South Providence and Washington Park neighborhoods to have some of the highest rates of asthma in southern New England, a problem that will get worse as temperatures rise and ozone alert days increase. Rhode Island as a whole has the fourth highest rate of asthma in the country, with 11.2% of the population suffering from the respiratory condition, according to the CDC. The national average is 7.8%. For decades, the public health impacts of building more polluting infrastructure along the Providence River have been barely debated by officials and stakeholders. Operations along the Allens Avenue waterfront include a hot mix asphalt plant that emits compounds linked to child development disorders and to cancer, and an oil terminal that emits similar pollutants and other toxins linked to neurological and respiratory disorders. At one facility on the waterfront, some 3 million pounds of chemicals such as chlorine, ammonium, and formaldehyde are stored. Some of the solutions, because I'd like to talk about solutions as I talk about problems to give people hope. Significantly reduce the manufacturing and use of plastics. Stop treating the most disenfranchised neighborhoods in Rhode Island's urban core as sacrifice zones. Better enforce state and federal laws designed to hold polluting businesses accountable. Provide the DEM with the proper staffing and funding to hold polluting businesses accountable. And stop littering. Another basic right that's being affected is water. The growing human population, increasing demands of agriculture industry, and the worsening impacts of the climate crisis are particularly taxing on drinking water supplies. The more frequent and heavy rains and the flooding they cause increase drinking water contamination. And the creep of seawater, thanks to sea level rise and storm surge that reaches further inland. Private wells and freshwater aquifers is a growing problem in Rhode Island. There's also very unequal access to safe drinking water. A multi-agency analysis in 2019 found there is unequal access in the United States to safe drinking water, based most strongly on race. Drinking water systems that consistently violated the law for years were 40% more likely to occur in places with higher percentages of residents who are people of color, according to EPA. When actions were taken to compel systems to fix their violations, it took longer for water systems in communities of color to come back into compliance. So what can we do about that? Incentivize and/or mandate the replacement of cesspools and the repair of failing septic systems. passed legislation to curb the manufacturing and use of PFAS, better land use management, including the protection of forest land. Don't use or overuse pesticides and/or fertilizers. Don't dump hazardous waste such as motor oil, antifreeze, cleaners, and paint on the ground. And don't, this is a tough one, don't water or overwater your lawn. Frank, our columnist, has been writing those columns for years, and I think he's fighting a losing battle. People here love their lawns. So food justice seeks to ensure that everywhere people have access to healthy, equal food. A lot of neighborhoods in Rhode Island's urban core have little to no access to fresh food, or even full-service grocery stores, a situation often referred to as a food desert. On the other hand, other marginalized communities are surrounded by food swamps, areas in which a large amount of processed foods, such as fast food and convenience store, is available with limited healthy options. In 2021, 18% of Rhode Island households could not meet their basic food needs, according to the Rhode Island Community Food Bank. Black and Latino households had the highest percentage of food insecurity at 34%. From 2017 to 2019, food insecurity in Rhode Island affected 9% of households, and in 2020 touched 25% of households, most of which was tied to the explosion of COVID. Last year, the Community Food Bank distributed a record amount of food, 15 million pounds, through its statewide network of partner agencies. You wouldn't think a state like Rhode Island would have that many food insecure people. Some of the solutions to that problem: protect and preserve farmland, better support small and medium-sized growers, encourage the growing of local food, support the development of community gardens, eliminate food deserts, reduce transportation barriers to food access, serve more local food in public schools. Another basic right that's being affected by climate change is housing. Housing is considered affordable if a household pays no more than 30% of its annual gross income on housing-related costs. Households are considered cost-burdened if they pay more than 30% and severely cost-burdened if they pay more than 50% of their income on housing. Rhode Island is trending in the wrong direction when it comes to addressing housing affordability. The number of cost-burdened renters and owners in the state increased by 44% from 2000 to 2012. The number of severely cost-burdened households increased 59% during that time. The Housing Works report explained why Rhode Island needs more affordable housing. It projected a need for 34,600 new homes by 2025, most as multifamily properties because of a growing need for smaller households. It also noted nearly all new households over the next decade are projected to have incomes below 120% of the area median income, which was $103,000 for a family of 4 in fiscal '21. A number of ways to address this issue is pass zoning laws in all 39 Rhode Island municipalities that support affordable housing efforts, such as allowing multifamily housing. Pass rent control measures, make the emergency rental system permanent, make rental assistance universally available, rebalance the power that tilts toward landlords, incentivize new construction of affordable homes. Some of the new diseases coming our way due to climate change as insects and animals adjust is a new disease caused by the Lone Star tick. It used to be found mainly in southern areas. Now it has been found in Rhode Island. It's the predominant tick in Jamestown on Connecticut Island, and it's making its way on deer as they swim ashore. So it's becoming more common in Rhode Island. The bite of the tick causes alpha-gal syndrome, which causes an allergy to a sugar found in the tissues of all mammals. The tick can have the alpha-gal in its gut or saliva and transfer it to a human via a bite. Symptoms range from hives and anaphylaxis to nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. Symptoms occur between 3 and 6 hours after eating. Many doctors are unfamiliar with alpha-gal syndrome and how to treat it because it's not common here yet. The syndrome will become more common in Rhode Island as Lone Star ticks continue to move in. In conclusion, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by bad news and a seeming lack of solutions to climate change. But we are not too late to make a difference. Reversing climate change will be a marathon, not a sprint. Figuring out how to combat climate change must go further than making minor changes to your personal carbon footprint. Recycling and reusing can only go so far. Rhode Island residents, policymakers, and stakeholders must work together to pursue effective solutions. Thanks. If anybody has questions, I'm happy to answer them. Go ahead.
I'm curious what you feel are the challenges and opportunities related to reporting on these issues.
Massive challenges and equally massive opportunities. I mean, we're lucky, Joe and Frank were very prescient to start ecoRI, 13, 14 years ago. I'm sure they didn't know it was going to grow into the beat that it has today. I mean, I would say that climate change is the most important beat in the world. Large news organizations like the Associated Press created a climate desk. New York Times has a climate desk. So there's no end to stories and reporting. It's not going to go away. The beats, it's not going to be solved in our lifetime. And there's so many ways that the climate affects health and environmental justice. And, in Rhode Island, I feel is a microcosm because we have farmland, we have the ocean, we have shoreline, we have shellfish, we have, all sorts of things that other states don't have all together. So we're kind of like a melting pot for climate issues. So everything happens on a bigger, more intimate scale here. I feel blessed to be in this job at this time. Go ahead.
That was terrific, thank you. When I sit around and think about, and you raised it on your slides, we need more housing, or we need to preserve the land. I wonder how can we do something related to that? I live in Exeter, Rhode Island, and I have those, again, solar panels are important. Where we're putting them is devastating to me, and I'd like to know what I can do about it.
But there's a movement, we wrote a story about it, one of my reporters did, to combine affordable housing with land management in the development of affordable housing that incorporates open space. So if you have an X acres of a development, you put the housing on this many acres, and then you have open space. Places like Exeter and Little Compton are great for that. The problem is a lot of towns don't want affordable housing, and it's gonna have to be built, And ideally, if you can combine it with open space and make a place where people can be outside, then it's a win-win. But that's just starting to be discussed now. Go ahead.
I know that climate and health connections are a little bit abstract, like everyday people, and like when people are trying to system use and they have very busy lives, like trying to discern that. How do you go about communicating those more abstract concepts more succinctly in a way that like a broader audience will understand?
We try to always bring our stories home somehow to show an example of how it affects somebody in Rhode Island. Talking about the neighborhoods that are most disadvantaged. A lot of people wouldn't think about that if it wasn't written about, so kind of making people understand how it does affect you, and through my slideshow, food insecurity, new diseases, eventually one of these things is going to affect you. You're going to get alpha-gal syndrome, or, you're going to need affordable housing, or, your neighborhood's going to flood 6 times a year. So it's getting easier to make these abstract concepts less abstract because it's pretty much in everybody's face. But it's important to us at ecoRI that we make sure everybody can relate to what's happening and not, to know that it's going to happen to them and it's happening now. Environmental justice has become a big issue of ours. We've actually lost a few readers because we've started to write more about how the disadvantaged and are affected by climate change. But that's a growing, issue too. So we just try to keep, and there's never not a story idea. It's just constant. So it's trying to figure out what's best served our readers, and what can wait or what can we do a larger picture on. So it's a lot of juggling. Did you have a question again? In the back?
Oh, I just wanted to respond to the previous speaker's question about solar farms. The answer
Well, there's, some efforts in the legislature to do that too. It's just, in the beginning, I think, when the rush to build solar, they didn't think about cutting down forests, which is also bad. It was just solar, solar, solar. So now we're like, oh, phew, we don't want to cut down forests either. Good.
I just would like to comment on that comment, and that is that that is a really great way of doing, adding solar panels without disrupting people. And I'm not an expert, but I have a friend who is an expert, and I wrote an article on this, arguing that, in fact, if you put solar panels on every house and parking lot, it would only supply about 10% of our needs, or something like this, for the whole country. And in fact, you need much bigger solar fields across the country. And the big issue is actually the transmission lines.
That's true.
And so, anyway, not to discourage that, but it needs to be thought of at a much bigger scale.
Well, our electrical grid has to change in order to support the kind of solar that we need. And that's going to cost a lot of money, of course. So, go ahead.
I wonder, what are the pressure points you would suggest for us to advocate for a cleaner Allen's Avenue? Is that should be sort of things be moved out, or should there be better enforcement?
Yes, hold their feet to the fire. Speaking of fire, there was a fire at Rhode Island Recycled Metals the other week. They've been trying to shut that down for years. Frank Carini, I don't know where he is, but he's written a ton about that, and they just turned a blind eye. There's so much down there that's not compliant or is against the law, and they don't do anything about it. Because it's like, well, it's there, we don't see it, it doesn't affect us. So, yeah, I would say compliance and just keep continuing to raise awareness of how that affects people, like the asthma rates in that area, things like that.